Today's the 21st of Av, the 26th of August, and we're starting chapter 17 of Shorish Mitzvah Satfila in Derech Mitzvah Secha.
We have a guest coming.
Oh, look at that.
Kosher guest.
Okay, so we finished with what it means. Oh, we got it printed. So we finished with what it means that we awaken from below the same way that God is awakened from above, meaning that we go out of our limits, and that's also the same thing as Hashem bringing down from beyond all that can be grasped from the source of everything, which is beyond any comprehension. So now chapter 17. So we said that, why are we doing this? Because the main part of davening, the main part of prayer is the Shema and Shmoneh Esrei. Everything else was added on later. The Shema is a mitzvah from the Torah, and the Shmoneh Esrei was in order to formalize the way that a person prays every day. So from the Torah, all he needs to do, as we saw according to most of the opinions, is just to pray when he needs something, when he wants to call it to God. So there was no, in the whole time of the first temple period, there was no formal prayer, although there's a hint to it a little bit in Ezekiel that they had something called Beit Ha'am, the house of the people, that seems to suggest that they did pray together in some way, but nothing was formalized. And then in the second temple period, they saw that without telling people what to do, they wouldn't know what to do. So they formalized it. And Anshe Knesset Gedola,
stamped it, so to speak, correct?
First of all, they wrote the wording for the Amidah, right? They wrote the 18 benedictions.
Yeah, but you're saying there was prayer before. They invented this, or this was a redaction of what was going on?
It's not clear. It's not clear if there was anything that was like there must have been some kind of skeleton that they started from.
Fine.
But we don't know.
Yeah.
Where would it have come from?
That over time, people go to like you see little prayers today that are started. Like you have Rebbe Limelech of Luzhensk's prayer, the Adarabba. So it's been around for like 200 years, and it goes around, and people copy it from one person to the next, and then today you already print it out, and a lot of people see it.
So there was something existing.
Because it was. Everything was oral transmission, or almost everything was oral transmission at the time. There was something, wasn't it? and remember, that's basically what we're doing. We're orally saying. So it's very. It lends itself very much that there was some kind of something that was going around. Mm-hmm. And then in the second temple period, they decided to formalize this, whatever this skeleton was.
I hate to make a hemshik, but at some point, not that long ago, they realized that Homer, his work was not. It was an ongoing oral.
Oh, of course.
Tradition.
They didn't write it.
Right, exactly.
People didn't.
So that
people didn't sit down at a desk and write something. It was nothing like that.
Yes.
Everything was much more fluid, and
exactly.
So this was, again, this is in the oral tradition, not in the written tradition, something different. It's the Torah is like the Torah is written at the same time. The writing is basically has become a staple almost, at least by the nobility, the people who could afford a scribe. So in Egypt and in Babylon, writing was very strong, as opposed to Greece, which caught on much, much later. So when you look at the Torah is an outgrowth of the Egyptian. I mean, that's how we understand it. And the Egyptians were writing for about 1,000 years before the Torah was written.
Were they writing?
Writing, Amish writing.
You mean hieroglyphics?
Hieroglyphics is not writing.
No, it is writing.
It's storytelling. It's
No,
writing.
it's writing. There's different types of hieroglyphics. I don't know. Remember all the names.
It's not necessarily phonetic.
It's not necessarily phonetic. Later on, it became phonetic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it turned into a phonetic alphabet. So this all changed as things were going on. But again, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't write in hieroglyphics.
No.
He wrote already in a phonetic
That's right.
alphabet, which existed thanks to the Phoenicians, not thanks to. Again, there was. What I'm saying is not that our alphabet comes from the Phoenicians. We're just saying that in parallel to us receiving writing from God, there was also writing that was developed over a few hundred years by the Phoenicians. And by the time that Moshe Rabbeinu writes the Torah, they also have a phonetic alphabet. We weren't the only ones. So anyway, getting back to prayer. So these two things, the Shema and the Shemona Esrei, they're the basis of everything.
Was there anything written before Moshe wrote the Torah by us?
Yes, it must have been, because it says that in Egypt they had writings.
We had writings?
We had writings of Bereshis, of the book of Bereshis.
We had writings?
Bereshis before the giving of the Torah?
Of course. Moshe Rabbeinu only was told how to write it correctly, out of the many, probably, versions that there were. No, it wasn't an oral tradition, it was a written tradition. In Egypt they turned it into a written tradition.
The story of the flood was an oral tradition.
No, even in Babylon it was a written tradition.
When the flood happened, that was storied generation to generation.
Yeah, but already about 1,000 years before the Torah, this was already written. It was written down in cuneiform.
There were other civilizations.
Oh, you mean
Babylon.
they had their own myths?
In Mesopotamia, I keep calling it Babylon, but
They
it's
wanted to write myths. They just didn't understand the
No,
thing.
they had their creation myth. It was based on the actual...
no.
It wasn't part of
The
the
point here
creation.
isn't whether there's oral tradition. That exists everywhere. The point is that whether there's a written tradition. And in Mesopotamia, from the time of Sumerians, and Sumerians are at the time of Abraham.
Yeah.
So we're talking at least 400 years before Moshe Rabbeinu.
Yes.
They have
They
writing.
had writing, sure.
And they wrote in many languages, not just in one. They use the same alphabet for Sumerian, which is a different type of language altogether. It's not Semitic. I don't know what exactly type of language it is. And for Akkadian, which was the international language of Mesopotamia. But there were many languages that they spoke there, and they were all written down in cuneiform tablets. So this predates even Moshe by at least 500 years. Maybe even more, maybe up to 1,000 years. So there's writing. That's not the issue. And cuneiform, by the way, is entirely complex. There's phonetic there, and there's pictorial there. So there's a lot of writing going on already. It's just that a regular person can't do this because you have to
class.
Right, there was class to learn this. In any case, so that's why we're focusing on this all the time. We're focusing on the Shema and the Shemona Esrei because this is what the prayer really is. The fact that we have so much today going on before in Shachris and so much going after, this is all later additions, mostly from after the year 1000. I mean, most of it was added after. So we have a lot going on that also needs to be explained why it is, but again, the core is just these two. So we said in Shema we bring down this new light. And right, and then in Shemona Esrei ubichinat yichud zun. דהיינו שלהיות נמשך אור וגילוי זה בביאה צריך להיות על ידי ייחוד זון. So it says in Shemona Esrei now, in the 18 Amidah, that's where we do the unification, not between Abba and Ima, which is what happens in Shema, but between Zer and Pin and Nukve, the small countenance and its feminine counterpart. And they are what bring the light down into the three lower worlds, meaning everything we've done here in the Shema, we said this at the very beginning when we started this whole topic, is in the world of emanation. And he said we don't have the strength to stand there, so we sit. So that's why we say the Shema sitting down, because we don't have the power to stand there. It's the same thing, by the way, the question about when you put on tefillin of Rabbeinu Tam. So tefillin of Rabbeinu Tam, they're considered to be in the world of emanation also. So logic would dictate, since you're in the world of emanation, you should be standing up. But again, following the Shema, we don't have the strength to stand up there, so we sit down.
How do we have the strength to stand up in front of the Torah reading?
It's not an emanation. It's not an atzilus. Torah reading is entirely different. The kavanos there are completely different from out of left field, like completely different. But where is this also applicable? In Shmoneh Esrei. So in Shmoneh Esrei we stand up. So he says everything we're doing is actually, we already finished doing what we did in emanation, in Atzilus. Now we're bringing it down into the three lower worlds. And for that we have strength to stand up. So we're standing in the world of creation. And that's where Shmoneh Esrei is actually happening. So Shmoneh Esrei is lower than Shema. Sure. That also makes sense because Shema is from the Torah and Shmoneh Esrei is from the Chazal, from the sages. Okay, so the vehicle here is the unification between Zer Anpin and the Nukva.
Nukva is represented by Malchus?
A lot of times when you just say it in Sfirot, so Zer Anpin would be Tiferet and Nukva is Malchus. כמו הדיבור שהוא גילוי לזולתו. And it's the same thing, sorry, I skipped here, שהם בחינת ייחוד קול ודיבור, and they are the unification. Another way of saying Zer Anpin and Nukva is that they are the unification of voice and speech. Voice, or something you call it sound, but it's really voice. Kol is more inner. It's like what comes out, and the speech is what goes out. So the voice is coming from inside, and the speech is what's going outside.
So the voice is like
the voice is the masculine.
Things out loud in your mind.
It could be an inner voice. Kol hapnima delo ishtamat, one of the languages in the Zohar that's an inner voice that's not heard outside. But speech has to be heard.
Right.
It has to be expressed in some way. You could write it down instead of saying it, but it has to be expressed in some way. So that's the nukva. That's the feminine. But the voice, which is either beginning inside or staying inside, whatever it is, that's the masculine. She'al-adam nimshach gilui or ensof lezulato. And what's common to both of them is that when they work together, they are revealing what's going on the inside to whatever's outside. So that's the idea of the worlds of Bia. The three worlds, the three lower worlds of creation and formation and action are worlds of expression. Somebody might say creation is a world of thought. Why is that expression? Because even to myself, to think, I have to think out loud. Meaning, even if I'm not voicing it to anyone, but I'm thinking, I have to hear myself think. So either I say it, if I'm thinking out loud, or I don't say it, I don't actually articulate it, but I have to listen to my thought. I have to be able to hear it. So that's already a level of revelation. Whereas what happened before in the Shema, where I go into a place where there is no words, there's no names, so that's beyond voice. There's no articulation even. So somebody say, but we say words.
Yeah, we do say.
We say words, right? But the words are only in order to awaken the feeling, the emotion, the love. We said, which is beyond our limits.
Which goes nicely in this concept that some people's prayers are very short and yet they're very meaningful.
Right.
So it's not the words; it's the
exactly.
preparation for those words.
Right. So today, I think today is the yortzeit of Aaron of Belz, who was one of the few survivors from Belz from the Holocaust. And when
of davening, like running really fast and then davening for 2 minutes.
That's the holy Yid. He's not now. He's in the winter. So, but Aaron of Belz was very famous when he came to Eretz Yisrael. I don't know what it was like before he came to Israel after the war, but he used to prepare all day for davening. Nobody would see what he was doing. He'd go around, he'd do things, and then at some point in the middle of the day, suddenly he would concentrate for a few minutes at a table, and suddenly he'd get up and he'd say the whole davening in 5 minutes, and that was it. So there's stuff like that the person's preparing the voice for a long time, and then the speech comes out very quickly. So it depends on who you ask. If you ask the Chassidim, the preparation for a mitzvah is always greater than the mitzvah itself. Why? Because the kavana is the ikar. Right? But the first thing you need to do, and you have to understand this about zun, about the small continents. Why do we call them small continents? Because he's not mature, he's not built up yet. So the first thing you have to do is build him up. How do you build him up? So everything, we talked about this many times, everything in the spiritual world, in order to build it up, you have to add mochin to it. Mochin means mind. You have to add mind energy into it. So how do you add mind energy into Zun, into the small continents to mature him so that he can couple with his nukva? In other words, the voice that is brewing inside is not yet ready to become speech. It takes time to it's like a person who is very serious, like a diplomat or somebody who, maybe a diplomat doesn't have to do it, but you have to, in the same way that you write out what you want to say. So you could go through many, many iterations, it could take weeks even to write one speech. And that would be a good example of voice and speech, that the voice would be the written version that you go through many iterations of and edit and so on. And then the speech itself could take 5 minutes. You only say 5 minutes worth of something. But you thought it out for half a year. It could very easily be. Usually. What?
Mark Twain said it famously.
Yeah.
I'd written a shorter note, but I ran out of time.
I ran out of time. So this is always the process. So you have to add mind to it. Add mind to it means you're adding intellect. Okay, so we'll end here today.
A Chassidus,
Yeah, go ahead.
a Chassidus Yid once with the Brisker Rav. We're talking about preparation. It's Hanukkah. The Brisker goes, "Oh, it's time to light now."
Yeah.
He goes, "Wait, what are you in? In other words, the underlying thing was he was always prepared.
Uh-huh.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
He didn't have to go into any kind of. It was now time to light candles.
Yeah.
It was all one. So it's
He's there all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.